Hello. I thought I would sort of make a dramatic entrance because it's the liberal arts, and I'm actually an engineer, writer, because I have both newspaper essays and internet essays. And my beginnings began with the creative side of things. My Indian essays, I got my first break when I was 18, doing my first year of chemical engineering, undergraduate chemical engineering, and a Bangalore newspaper, Deccan Herald, published an article by me. Um, it was called "Eccentricity: Thy Name Is Mother," and it was, of course, a fond look at the vagaries of my mother, widowed mother, since I had been 11 years of age. Anyways, that's and I have, I have internet essays, internet poems on Poem Hunter, and internet essays on LinkedIn and Facebook. I have a political essay in the Arizona Republic, and um, an analytical essay in the Arizona Senior World and the Toronto Star. Yeah, dating back to my MNG, right after after I got my Master of Engineering degree in chemical engineering. Yeah. So, anyways, I'll begin with an introductory look, just a few lines. And this book has an introduction by Jane Urquhart. Jane Urquhart, um, in the literary sense of the word, has an artistic side to her writing, artistic uh, 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 personality to her writing, because her descriptions of certain things are so good. Um, I have read her The Underpainter in this introduction, and her book, which she released for the 50th birthday of Canada, and I've read half of it and been inspired by it too. She looked at, you should look at the book, maybe because I would get sidetracked. I just chose this was on the school curriculum for my son in his private school, high school days, and uh, she's spoken about anthologies. Anthologies, as I gather, are like this collections of short stories, and uh, she's still spoken about a stunning example of a 19th century anthology, which is a collection of Canadian fiction told entirely from the viewpoint of a series of anonymous maple trees living on the edges of battlefields or near Huron villages. And the 20th century brought on anthologies assembled by preachers and politicians, followed by anthologies selected by poets and professors. So you can see this change in change in evolutionary development of humankind. It was warfare and maple trees, and then preachers and politicians, and then professors. I mean, so much of importance given to education. You need to excel, be the best, and hence, and I chose. This has been the uh, by Michael Winter, and a short story by Michael Winter. I'll just make two observations by him. The story is "This All Happened," and I'll get down to my own interviewer side of things. Three questions with a short discussion on each question. This is the story "This All Happened" by Michael Winter, and this man is Jewish, I think, or well, there's a Jewish character. I haven't read the end. I've read some of the stories, but I haven't read this. It speaks about the Yom Kippur War. Alex is speaking about the Yom Kippur War, and he says this is an interesting fact. In 1931, Hyman Feder donated $3, a Chagall print of Moses with the Torah. It's interesting, isn't it? $3. It must have cost only $3 then. Anyways, coming to what I thought, would be interesting is this. Uh, Telling stories over and over again is a Catholic Catholic thing, says Michael Winter. Um, and he's spoken about it really well. You would have to read this. It's a longer excerpt. And Protestants tell a story, and it's over then. They feel self-conscious to tell the story again. Um, they're aware of who has already heard the story. Protestants tell a story best the first time, Catholics the last time. It's such good writing. Uh, Catholics rehearse their stories as well, apparently. They tell stories over and over. The same story, torquing it a little, realizing a certain detail is not working, adding stuff, and it goes on. This would be what is called fine literature, and it's all Canadian. And I come to my own discussion. All right, my first question is, what is Alice Munro's contribution to Canadian literature? And I have my own written down script. But before that, I'll read to you a few portions as I read from this book, from the Canadian Encyclopedia. And obviously, I mean, she's the Nobel laureate, right? And Mr. Harper was prime minister then, and the Canadian Encyclopedia says Munro's mastery of the cultural and vocal tones of a region has her acuteness in delineating social class is now a critical commonplace. But when she began, it was also special, right? Because she began in the she began in she was in her 90s when she passed away. So almost a century. So 20, oh my God, 1920s. She was born then. She was born then. So so she lived through the World War II, and Munro often narrates the stories in a manner reflecting the outlooks of her relatively unsophisticated characters. They appear before us as if we had bumped into them at the mall or the hairdressers or the home and school meeting, relating their experiences in ways that the author uh, then uses to reveal deeper meanings. Her amplitude of style and approach, it's often noted, give her short stories the moral density of lengthier novels. Well, that's an interesting way of describing it. So I will go on to my own. There's more from the Canadian Encyclopedia. To those of you who are interested, I chose. I have three stories which I've chosen, and it's a little exercise for you, the listener, or the viewer, more accurately, the viewer of my YouTube video, to look up which stories these are, because then I sort of get the feedback that sometimes professors, teachers also, teachers and professors find it a little um, frustrating that I tend to reveal research facts, and students just, but I'm sure they do their own research. Students are eager keeners, as a friend of mine used to say, keeners, and they want to do their best. So they may be adding their own fact. But one fact is from me. So in a while, I haven't done this because I have collections, because with creative nonfiction, with four collections of creative nonfiction with the Canada Council for the Arts, and a collection of political essays, a few literary essays with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, of course, in my own area with my professor, the chair of the Department of Chemical Engineering in the University of Toronto. So it encourages you to be keeners. That's all. This sort of precedent I'm setting, working for 4 years, not much money coming. I don't think I will ever make as much money as I made in the good old days when my son was a child. Lucky mascot, my son. But the car came, I drove the car, my leased car. And before that, I drove my husband's car. So sorry for the aside, but this is not my area to be strict and completely dry approach. Little colorfulness. Literature has descriptions and that sort of thing. So yeah. Anyways, the story Toronto Star published about Rose, about her character Rose, about Alice Munro's character Rose. All right, so it's began, and I had found it fascinating reading because it was my first experience of Alice Munro. This was soon after she got a Nobel Prize, and um, before I go on to the story, I'd first like to make this observation about Alice Munro's uh, about the stories I've read. Female characters as heroines mostly, but the main characters have our sympathy going towards them in the three stories that I shall list. Rose, in the Toronto Star story, she has done well after the divorce. It sort of builds up to this climax, the short story, and it's all condensed. You see, as she said, more as the Canadian Encyclopedia said, moral density of a novel, of a of a regular sized novel. She has done well after divorce, and her ex-husband, whom she meets in the airport, has gone on to, if I remember correctly, have a family of his own while making it in the world himself. This is sort of coming to the crossroads of the feminist hyphen feminine mother for me myself. You see, I because I'm an engineer, I like to think that that's the XY chromosome comes from my father, and this is all the XX chromosome comes from my mother, and of course her maternal and her father, my maternal grandfather, and some of it from my maternal grandmother. Of course, cannot deny the influence of paternal um, grandparents. So, anyways, so the feminist is how I would have been. So I thought, I'm looking back at the story and thinking myself moving ahead. If I had not, even my son was born by the time I got my first job. Let's say, I've chosen to ignore his needs, um, which are a little more well met. I mean, there are number of career oriented women, feminist women who make it in this world, raise their kids, but uh, whose needs were a little more well met because I was at home, and when my even lost my G2, could not renew it the second time, and so I had to walk him back. No car, and I don't think my son ever forgave me for this because I think he didn't have walking legs. It was all driving around for some time then, and it took him a little while getting used to not driving, but he coped with it like a trooper. So you really he would walk. I would walk him back from school and then walk him to baseball class. Walk him back. He would play baseball after, and then walk him back, and he coped with it. But so that's the feminist side. How would I, if I had not chosen to set aside, if I'd chosen to set aside some of my son's needs, and then gone on to move ahead in my profession, as how I am, feminine mother. So that sort of puts it in a nutshell. This whole story, the ending, and is there regret in her? That's not quite expressed. It's all you would have to infer this after you read the story. And uh, he's just moved on. He has his own family, and she's moved up. I think she's in a television. I should have looked at the story again, but I thought it would be a nice exercise for you to read her stories. She's working for some publications of some sort. I think television broadcasting. And next story, the flat road one. It's told from the eyes of a young girl who has a younger brother, I think. And in the story, the older man develops a love for the young woman who arrives at his doorstep one fine day. And I think she has a young baby, if I remember correctly, or maybe I'm getting confused with the young girl herself, who's maybe about 7, 6, 7, or 8 at the most. The tale is told through the eyes of the young girl. The young woman vanishes one fine day after living for a long time, and the man has begun to really enjoy his days with her. And I think he buys a ring and he shows it to the neighbors, to the young girl's father. And the hero drives into Toronto. That's the older man, because she's vanished, looking, hoping to find her. And he drives all around. They live in the outskirts of Ontario, of Toronto, in Ontario, and he drives all the way and goes around. She stole some street, and he goes around and he can't find her. I did feel really sorry for her, for him. Well, she goes back to whatever life she was leading. So, and I guess not, and Alice Munro has not dwelt on that side of things anymore. I mean, it's just one cut-off point. He comes back, um, dejected and sad that she's left him, and all's well that ends well? Question mark. I have. He comes to terms with it. Of course, I mean, he would have to come to terms with it. Three, the story which gave me the term corduroy road. This is in the lives of girls and women. The other one is also in the lives of girls and women, I think. First one is who do you think you are? The story about Rose. Yeah, I think the story about Rose. Anyways, the story which gave me the term corduroy road. And this is well, again, you would enjoy looking it up yourself. Uh, Having lost my own father when I was 11 years old, I have the fondest but relatively fewer memories of my maternal grandfather and all uncles from both sides of my family, because my mother was widowed, so mostly women visited her also, but men also came, and then she chose to get involved with a charitable organization, and then there were both sexes and etc., considerable mingling with both sexes. I thought that the description of the men may have been an unconscious expression of a deeper resentment of male power, which comes with certain responsibilities coming from the author. So I will look up I should have done this. Look up the book and describe to you. um, where is my Lives of Girls and Men? Sorry, I'm sorry. It's right here. Right here. It's not so far off. And Flat Roads is here. The Flats Road. That's the first story. Can't go wrong. Here is Corduroy Road. This is the okay. Uncle Craig. Yeah. Heirs of the Living Body. Okay, yeah, all right. I'll just read one description, and that might have been because this was it was well, she grew up, so she must have began writing from the mid to late 40s, and or even 50s, early 50s or late 50s, because all right, or one of his eyes was blind, and this is a description of Uncle Craig. One of his eyes was blind, had been operated on, but remained dark and clouded. That eyelid had a menacing droop. His face was square and sagging, his body stout. There was another photograph, not in this room, but in the front room across the hall, which showed him stretched out on a rug in front of his seated, elderly looking parents. A blonde, plump, self satisfied, adolescent head resting on one elbow. Auntie Grace and Aunt Elspeth and the younger sisters in frizzed bags and sailor dresses sat on hassocks at his head and feet. My own grandfather, my father's father, who died of the flu in 1918, stood up behind the parents' chairs with Aunt Mora, so slender then, who lived in Porterfield on one side, and Aunt Helen, who had married a widower and now gone around the world, and lived now rich in British Columbia on the other. Look at your Uncle Craig. Aunt Elspeth or Auntie Grace would say, dusting this picture. Doesn't he look full of himself, eh? Like the cat that licked up all this cream. They spoke as if he were still that boy stretched out there in beguiling innocence for them to pamper and laugh at. And uncles are there's more description. There's more description. This was not so bad. I mean, the sisters were fond of him, so that wasn't so bad. The older sisters. Masculine self-centeredness made him restful to be with. Never quite giving a compliment to the I don't opposite sex. More about men, baby. Uh, or maybe you should have fun. I'm holding you up. I'm holding up the camera. Maybe you should have fun looking it up. I showed you the story. There's more to it, and so uh, what do you have to comment on this? To the this is particularly directed to Mr. Brawl, the Canada Council for the Arts, for he will not take a decision on my four collectors of creative non-fiction, self-centered, restful self-centeredness, Mr. Brawl. But it's getting a little too self-restful. I need some feedback here, please. All right, because my anyways. The question two. Rohinton Mystery, Anita Rao Badami, and of course Michael Ondaatje, bearing in mind that they are immigrant Canadian celebrated writers, and Mr. Ondaatje has set his The English Patient in a non-East Indian location, comma, are wont to set their books in India. Does this sort of, you know, falling back on previous lives, enrich Canadian literature? That's my question. So a preview for this is two. Obviously, I have to hold up the clause in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the multiculturalism clause. Growing up in Bangalore, India, I mostly read British and American writers. The famous Canadians we were taught about in school were Lester B. Pearson and Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and they were highly praised as well. I remember my history teacher. She was a female teacher. Her voice used to sort of change when she had said that a couple of times she said high standard of living, and we would ask the same question again. So Canada, absolutely high standard of living, sort of. A cut above the rest kind of a thing. Well, in the same breath as the USA. I came to the USA and well, lead the USA. Those were good years for the USA, as it was for Canada. Yeah. So, and then maybe we are still having good years, but a little bit of, hardships, the pandemic, and etc. Yeah. So, anyways, the white feminist woman fascinated my schoolgirl fancy, as did the white feminist or sexist man, as we would want to say, who appealed to the side of me, which wanted to become a high powered executive in the engineering world. Of course, romance is always a winner in a young girls and young girls and older women's minds. Back, I knew of two white women. Back then, is it? Uh, yeah, back then I knew of two. Oh, back then and through the other years, through my earlier years, as an I knew of two as a landed immigrant. I knew of two white women, and this was in Bangalore, and I think 6 weeks. Rebecca came in November and stayed with us. She came through my mother's charitable organization, sort of. She wanted to see a close and personal look of India, and she was an American from Cincinnati. Her mother was a Southern, and father was Jew. Father was Jewish. She had lived in Paris, was a dress designer, and she had this, sort of French accent. But she would call me my little Indian princess and mother. So she wanted me to go gallivanting off with her. I was still a virgin, right? Unmarried. Rebecca was not so much older than me, maybe 7 years, maybe even 6 years, 6, 7 years. And she she wanted me to go in buses and live the feminist life, feminist dream, going all around rural Karnataka, so to speak. Bangalore was all right. I was allowed to do whatever I wished in Bangalore. And my mother wouldn't quite say no, but she sort of did give permission. So mother, that was she was hilarious. Well, I have to say this to her. This one's for you, Rebecca. You will like my French toast now. Come back, come to Toronto. She visited us once. I think Shiram was there. Twice she came home in Phoenix. But once I went all the way, catching 3 buses to Arizona Biltmore Hotel. Her brother had a conference, and she and her friend from France had come with the friend with 2 children. I don't know how things fared for Rebecca. Did she get married? Very pretty, blue eyes and brunette, but very pretty. And then there was Marissa, also, and who was Shiram's work colleague's daughter, Al's daughter. Al incidentally thought I was, very pretty, so he got my heart, of course. And uh, uh, Marissa we met them in New York, and she took us to it began there. My introduction to the other side of North American society, I mean, American and Canadian society, to a cross-dresser show. And the man dressed as a woman was very talented, makeup and everything. And but I was a little sleepy. I had a long day, and I would do these runs, jogging in the morning and everything. Yeah, in Manhattan, but Manhattan's safe. So, so Marissa was a little unhappy, and so she chose to go to India, and she was getting a degree in modern dance. I think a master's then. So she's younger than I am. And I had Prana, and I went a week before Sriram came. My husband came, and um, another friends who had got chosen to get settled go back to India from Canada. Another couple of friends that we all who were kind enough to come and pick me up. We met in a hotel, and I think I picked up the tab. Then we didn't eat much, nothing. It was not a big tab, and or something. I don't remember the specifics of this. They may be. Those friends might remind you. I'm sorry, send an email to Canada Council for the Arts. I'm not lying. That's all I want to say. It just eludes my memory. And she was, you know, she's also very pretty, Marissa, and she loved India, and uh, loved the people and the difference in the culture. Hindu culture is very different from Christian culture. Although some things, I saw Madonna's latest song. It's a little different from her Material Girl. You have to remember this. And the Virgin Mary, taken around by people holding her sort of uh, 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 um, procession. That's what it's called in Indian circles. Not quite a parade. The procession with her in like a cart being held up high, the idol being held up high, the procession. And she's dropped off in the water. The idol is dropped off. That's all similar to Hindu. Uh, may have Hindu beginnings, or it's all Catholic. It's similar. It's in Italy, but it's done in Italy. That some of it is in her latest song. Yeah. So so Marissa was, and heaps of all these the red colored turmeric and the yellow turmeric everything, and heaps of brown sugar cubes, big cubes and everything. It just has them convulsing in laughter. But that's all sort of open markets. Weather, no winter. We all I turned on the heater, it didn't come, and it struck me it could be, and I don't know, natural gas supply being lost in Ukraine, pipelines being bombed, and what's the Nord Stream pipeline is supplying natural gas to Canada now. Or is it just Russia and Ukraine and the other areas? I don't. You have to think along these lines, right? Why didn't the heater come on? But luckily, it didn't come on because my husband wouldn't have liked it. He sees dollars swimming in front of his eyes. so it's not good. Anyways, but he's a good man. He's a good man. He understands. I spend more time at home. I need the heating, and yeah. So they loved it, anyways. And this was when I was working for the chemistry department here. Prana was two, and in the University of Toronto. And this was when Rebecca and Marissa, they both fell in love with India. And maybe we Canadians like to read about men and women who lead Indian lives. I presume, I deduced, literature is universal in its reader-friendly construction. I myself said recently, engineering, in particular chemical engineering and science, is my religion. If the travails and triumphs of myself, if the travails and triumphs of myself growing up in a Hindu East Indian family and interested me and still do, the secrets of white families, passing on the baton of what has by now dwindled down to a few or more superior genes by biology and by upbringing, fascinate me. Well, because no more, I guess, a few, no, more, lot more than few. So superior with all the equality as classes in the in democracies and what have you. May have been maybe about 10 genes. No, 10 superior genes. I'm teasing you people. All right, I'll lay off. I'll lay off. But Donald Trump says all genes are superior, right? What does Kamala Harris say? From the Black and East Indian background, what does she say? What does Donald Trump say? Donald Trump is Scottish, I think. Yeah, Scottish, Scotsman, Scottish background, and but he had all European wives. Check, total babe, could ski and everything. Ivanka Trump's mother. Yeah, and the second lady was Italian. The third lady, Slovakian, I think. Melania Trump, Slovakian American. Yeah, and they're split up too. I mean, the third wife has also chosen to leave him. Wonder why, Mr. Trump? And anyways, and of course, I have to bring in my son's years now. Now grow, and environmental factors. Better environmental factors that contributes to superior genes. So we all chose to leave our own original countries, come here to study because life was good there. I mean, it's not that it's bad. The education is pretty good. The universities are pretty good, but here, research-oriented lifestyles are a promised, are a given. If you choose to study further, and the other factors as well. There are a lot of other factors going for Canada and America. So bringing up Pranav, I mean, taking him to all these classes and everything. So that hope opened a whole new vista for me, a whole new world for me. Yeah. So, anyways, third third point. That's my question. My third question is: has the British legacy in literature come down to Canadian authors and poets? British authors usually choose the World War to set their novels in. You know, growing up, I read P.G. Wodehouse, Alistair MacLean, Agatha Christie, of course, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and Alistair MacLean. And um, beg your pardon. Mostly they all dwell, well, not P.G. Wodehouse, but and neither Agatha Christie, but Alistair MacLean mostly uh, typically World War II. Then recently I picked up a, well, recently in the sense, 4 or 5 years ago in the Book City, and one maybe in Indigo. Two Maisie Jobs. I read one. Fascinating story. Not much going literary value wise. I mean, you don't have these stunning figures of speech and that sort of thing, but very nice story. And but I chose one. I chose one really good one. It's on one of my Poem Hunters web page or Facebook or LinkedIn. My computer, my old computer has gone out of. It's no, it's your no more refuse no more to me. It's broken down, so I don't have my records, and I would have to get myself an official email, and then I have access to all these my own articles, my own work. But YouTube, I'm still publishing, and a lot of it, and some of it, not a lot of it, has come on YouTube, but a lot of it since then because my collections are growing, and some of them are published. Some of them from those collections are published. But there's a lot yet to come out. All right, so there's promise, and I'm hoping Canada Council for the Arts comes through for me. Yeah, or at least passes on all the four collections of creative nonfiction to a book publisher with the recommendation that they be published, and I be paid maybe what's a fair pay. I don't have a liberal arts degree, but I have some background, so maybe 1,500, 1,200 to 1,500. But I have two sports courses. One collection is about taking my son to baseball and soccer classes, stories set during that period. Creative nonfiction, I mean, actual games, going to actual games. Mostly his father and my son did it. My husband and I sound like one of those old-fashioned women. My husband and my son did these things. But creative nonfiction, creative. Some of it is dialogue. I myself don't remember what dialogue we exchanged. My son surprised me with a phone call this morning because he's sick. He wanted the recipe for soup, Kannada soup. Yeah, so pepper soup. Yeah. So, anyways, they said their world wars. They chose the world wars to set their novels in. Maybe Canadians fought in foreign land when they were part of the World War I and World War II, and though they fought bravely and had victories and suffered some losses, they were not drawn. At least people at home were not drawn um, unequivocally. Is this the right usage? I don't want to whip out a dictionary now and hold you up. Please bear with me. If there's an error, then I'm in doubt. Unequivocally to the cause. All right. I had to compare Miss Alice Munro, the Canadian Nobel laureate for literature, and in spite of her literary talent, Miss Munro has a down-to-earth view of romantic life on this planet. But in a way, Miss Munro, with a feminist perspective, views the male world with rainbow tinted glasses. She was a fine writer who did not leave her readers their illusions about the male sex, but in her own way, she may have safeguarded the interests of men. Because I chose um, uh, this story, and the story is on the way to Japan, all the way to Japan, and it's actually there's an interesting ending to it. You're going to think she's going to go all the way to Japan from Vancouver, BC. All right. So where is Japan? Read the story. Or I'll be Mark poorly. It's Ontario, Toronto. Japan is Toronto. I'll be Mark poorly. I have to give out the story. This novel, a couple of places. I'll just share one piece. Um, and in the end, she goes into this man's arms. She meets him in a party. She has a small baby. She's found a babysitter. She's taken a bus and a couple of buses, walked the distance and everything. She's gone to a party. She thinks she should be privy to this party. She's called and said she would be coming because she has had an essay published, and these are writers. She meets a young man there. She's also fairly young. Her husband is an engineer, and she gets bored with engineers. Yeah, so she says, and I thought women would listen with rapt attention to men sharing their work world. Not that they should share their work world, because it should all be confidential, but just the fringes of it a little bit. But there you go. Miss Monroe says that she got bored, and then she looks at him, and she thinks he's not, exact phrase I forget, but Miss Monroe has said that he's not worth kissing. So in my language, it's better put in by Miss Monroe, which is nice. But the man falls in love with her and has her come all the way to Toronto from Vancouver. The husband goes to Lund, is it? Lund, and I found out it's in British Columbia itself. I thought it's in Sweden or France or something. Lundi is Monday, and so maybe France, but it's actually in um, um, Western British Columbia, and doesn't hear from him, and she comes here. So you have to remember that I have to give a detailed reading to this tale, and maybe it's in the best interest of the man, because he may have gotten more involved, gotten her pregnant. A kiss can go do many things, many magical things, or many socially unacceptable things. So he wasn't worthy of being kissed or something. So she considers to herself. So so she's in a way she's safeguarding the interests of the male sex, I think, Miss Monroe. But as I said, what did I say? I'll repeat this, and then that's the end of my talk, please. Views the world with rainbow, down to earth view of romantic life on this planet, Miss Monroe. Yeah, but her two marriages, interesting, isn't it? Very pretty. She looks very pretty. Old pictures. Watch 5 points about Miss Monroe's life on the Canadian Encyclopedia, and you're going to see her really old pictures. And she was a little plumper too, not so much skin and bones. Yeah, she was a little plumper. All right, thank you. Signing off. Gayatri B. Sitaram and Mr. Brault, I want your side of your analysis of my questions for you, please.